Even in fact, in another study reported that person gave the EEG of the machine number of the EEG equipment, electroencephalograph. How is this possible? The point here is all of them very clearly report that they were seeing from a corner of the room. From the corner of the room they were observing this. How is this possible when about experiments being done on these patients, all of them give a same near death experiences and being recorded right now in the last 20-30 years by people. Dr. Raymond Moody, he wrote a beautiful book in 1970 after doing a lot of investigations, and the book is called Life After Life. Not only Dr. Raymond Moody, but other doctors like Dr. Bruce Grayson, Dr. Sam Parnia, all these eminent doctors, Dr. Peter Fenwick and his wife from UK, all have recorded their medical reports, which is available in the medical files. When these medical files reports come to public notice, when they are recorded, sir, what more scientific medical proof you require other than this? Is there anything else? Does even science, when they saw Einstein writing his famous equation E equals mc squared, they saw his writings only and probably his discussion. These doctors whom I am talking about to you are all alive. In fact, Dr. Bruce Grayson gave a beautiful lecture about death is not final in 2011 at our own Dharmashala in a Buddhist conference. Dr. Peter Fenwick and his wife also gave a beautiful lecture in a Buddhist conference in Hong Kong. Dr. Sam Parnia has given his writing in records. Everything is published, writings are there. What more proof you require? Now, when you see Dr. Raymond Moody's near death experiences, you will be surprised. He says in a near death experience, the patient's heart is absolutely stopped. There is no EEG activity at all. And then he says, he lists out 7 or 8 that there is no heartbeat either before or after. So, in that interim period, the near death experience of the patient is recorded. And then he says the patient feels as if she is or he is floating over the body. And then he says they enter a tunnel. And then he says through the tunnel they merge into a bright light, million times more powerful than our sun, but it does not hurt. And then he says they find happiness and they are very reluctant to come back to their body. And then he says in that process they get accompanied by a very learned person. These listings are recorded by Dr. Raymond Moody. Now, what do you say for this? He himself has participated in a debate along with Dr. Eben Alexander, Dr. Sean Carroll and Dr. Steven Novella, who were arguing against the point that death is not final, whereas Dr. Raymond Moody and Dr. Eben Alexander were arguing that death is not final, whereas these two were arguing, that is Dr. Sean Carroll and Dr. Steven Novella were arguing that death is final. I will go to those in detail, but when Dr. Raymond Moody establishes his finding, especially in his book Life After Life, he was very certain. He was very certain that there is nothing called death. He was very certain that if you feel that you are dying or you are dead, it is nothing but trickery of your brain. Why? Because I will come to physics later on, but one of the important points in physics is matter cannot be created or destroyed. 17th century French physicist Antonio Lavoisier said, matter cannot be created or destroyed, it can change its form. When a dead body burns, the body burns, right? The body is made of molecules, it burns, it sends out all black molecules or whatever it is, they go into those air. The bones also get burnt, they mix, they change the form, the blood, the flesh, the nerves, everything changes its form, which you think it's gone, but they have not gone, they are in the atmosphere. They are in the atmosphere because they come from stardust and they are with the stardust. Every one of us are made by the with the stardust. When matter cannot be created or destroyed, even how can the body get itself destroyed? How can the body perish? It can change its form. Therefore, technically, as per the laws of physics, the body is not destroyed, but it changes its form. It appeals to your brain that the body has perished, that the dead person would not come back to life, because your brain is getting tricked. It is not able to perceive the change or the alteration of the so called perished body. The body from its present structure, by changing itself to alternative molecules and suspending itself or dispersing itself in the air, cannot be comprehended by you through your brain because of different neural filters, which I would come back to you when I go into medical perspective. Therefore, exclusively the body per se also does not perish. Now, when the scientists say that a person is dead and it is final, they only mean the body. They do not also mean the energy or the life force that is inside the body. When a young boy dies on a road accident or on something, you find that the life has been snuffed out of him. Finished, he is dead, they say. 20 years, 15 years, 30 years, 40 years, they do not come back. He was so fresh yesterday or so fresh today, something has gone, he is dead, that is it. What is this? The energy inside the matter that is called the body has gone out of the body. Where it has gone? When the matter itself cannot be created or destroyed, the same applies to energy, the life force which has escaped from the body. Therefore, the body is not able to function because the energy has escaped. If the battery is not able to function because the energy in the battery, the life in the battery has escaped. So, it does not give you more charge now. So, when that energy has escaped, where it can go? It has to be present. These factors I will explain more about physics when we go to physics, but the fundamental idea is death even of the body has not taken place. Do not confuse about death of the spirit or the soul or the life force. Even the body has not taken place because the body has changed its form, that is it. Now, I will come to in the near death experience, the experience of Dr. Eben Alexander, who is in the Harvard Medical School. He himself had that experience, the NDE. he was affected by an E. coli bacteria, meningitis, absolutely critical. He was in the hospital where he was working for about 9 days, he says. There were pus cells in his neurons, in his brains, pus. You know, in medical terminology, if you have a EEG taken on the body of a corpse, on a dead body, the EEG will show you number 3. For example, your BP is 120 by 80 is an example, the normal BP. The body, the EEG for a dead body, a corpse, is number 3, and for normal persons like us is number 15. That means there is a neurological activity. Your brain has sufficient electric current flowing between its neurons, simple. He says his EEG number was between 3 and 5, that from a corpse 3 to 5. All these were recorded when he was in a coma in this hospital, in a hospital in Virginia. When that was being the condition, he says in those periods when there was no neurological activity or his heart was not beating, he actually felt there is something going out of his body, entering through a tunnel, encountering a beautiful bright light, a place where it was something like a Persian carpets or with butterflies flying, somebody guiding him. He went to a beautiful blissful place where he never actually wanted to leave that. And mind you, these times his body was in coma. Then after 7 days, when his body became conscious or aware of the surroundings and he came back to the so called life or out of the coma, he only experienced or he only could remember this incident for the first 2 months. That means he remembered what had happened to him during his coma very well for the first 2 months of his bodily life. For the first 2 months he could not remember his family or work, he could not remember anything other than this experience. And lately he started remembering his office or home or relative or other memories started slowly coming back to him. That took 2 months, full 2 months after he had recovered. What is the strange thing between this? He says for the first 2 months he could only recover, he could only remember the beautiful experience he had. Only after 2 months of his coming out of coma, he could remember his body, his work experience or family experiences or other relationships. Who says this? Who has experienced this? It is Dr. Eben Alexander, who is one of the finest and famous doctors of the world from US. He is not an ordinary man who does not know to differentiate between an hallucination and a near-death experience. The doctor himself writes beautifully in his book. These are recorded, and the doctor himself speaks about his experience in intelligence squad debates conducted in New York around 2014 in the year. You can Google out. He says, what does it mean? It means there is something. There is something called consciousness or something called soul or something called energy which escapes the body, and where it goes, well, we will find out from what the Vedic scriptures say, but it escapes, and that escape causes the body to be functionless to our brains with our perceptive senses, and we perceive the man to be dead. And that is why young Nachiketa asks, pointing out to a dead body, whether one say he is there, one say he is not there. Explain to me, and you are the right person. He does not assume that he is dead and gone. He asks this question, beautiful, We will come later on when I touch the Vedic perspective. So, the main point is, when doctors themselves undergo this NDE, it is a concept which we cannot ignore. When I was interviewed by a reporter of a leading newspaper, she herself told that her grandmother, who was active and well and alive, suddenly started reporting that she could see her elders asking her to come. She couldn't understand the meaning, but she was perfectly all right. No mental problems or no brain problems or no heart problems, everything was functioning. But after 6 months she passed away. That means she had some notion that, or a feeling, or she saw her relatives at that point of time near death calling. These cannot be simply dismissed as brain hallucinations. If brain is responsible for all its pain, if brain is what it contains, then brain cannot explain fully. Then if you think that brain is everything, how can these near death experiences or feelings can take place when all of the findings lead to an irreversible and final conclusion that they are going through a tunnel and encountering a bright light, and there they are being guided by somebody, and they enter a place of bliss where they see their relatives and other persons, and the person who guides them there is an angel or a divine person. All of these medical reports point out to the same thing, and that is what exactly is being pointed out in our Vedas in Chandogya Upanishad, which I will come to when I touch that subject. So beautiful, so wonderful when you link between these reports. These people, I am sure, would not have read all those episodes of Chandogya Upanishad or Brahma Sutras. Beautifully Brahma Sutra, Badri Narayana Rishi says, and commentary given by Adi Shankaracharya, which I am going to go into my next, when I come to the next episodes on Vedas and Upanishads. But astonishingly and as a pleasant surprise, I found that these reports point out to these things. Well, not only me. You come to the experience of a very famous psychiatrist, MD doctor, Dr. Brian Weiss, who in his book reports Many Masters, Many Lives, Same Soul, Many Bodies. I have read those books. Through his patient Catherine, when he started regressing her, she went into those deep regressions and she followed what is known as, she says she came through a tunnel, she goes through a tunnel and encounters a beautiful bright light, and there she is being guided by a master who takes her to a beautiful place and then advises her on which plane she has to go, because the final plane, the seventh plane which they discuss here in this book, is what is known as the bliss. That is what is the seventh loka, Satya Loka, which is described in our Vedas. And she says through her the regression that she herself, the soul, decides on what type of a body one has to enter for its own evolution. It is not a God sitting on a throne asking you, judging you and sending you and creating all these differences. It is your own soul which decides for its own evolution, because the finality, the culminating point is Satyaloka, that is merging with the Brahma. For that, what are all the stages you have to go through? If this is, Dr. Brian says, he doesn't, I do not want to speak any lies in his foreword, he says, but these are what incidences happened, especially in one of the tests The patient, also called renamed as Catherine, says she was speaking in some demotic old languages which pertained to Egyptian language, 1567 years back to be precise. When these findings sprout out, when they come out, when more and more people nowadays talk about the near death experiences, it cannot be dismissed as a mere hallucination. I can understand if some villagers, somebody else who are not educated, who talk about these experiences probably out of their own imaginations or out of their own hallucinations or out of their own psychiatric weaknesses, some disorderliness in their brain, they may be talking like this. But when pinpoint evidence of a tunnel, of a light, of somebody guiding you, finding that place to be blissful, and that patient or that person does not want to come back to his own body, but being advised by others to go back to his body, when they all come on a similar footing, one has to accept the fact. One can feel these facts, just like one cannot see gravity. One can only assume a gravity by the pressure or by the force it exerts. In the same way, we also cannot prove probably in a scientific mode all these things, but you can infer the data. I am also going to take you to a subject called Darwin's theory of evolution and also Richard Dawkins' theories, but some of them which I would quote is even an axiom number, that is, Dr. Richard Dawkins says a 2 prime number sum will always be an even integer. There is no formal proof for that. This has been tested for 300 million numbers, he says. The sum of 2 primate numbers will always come to a even integer. 2 prime numbers will added up will always be an even integer, or an even integer can be also made out of 2 prime numbers. Therefore, there is no formal proof in science like A is equal to 2, B is equal to 2, therefore A equals B. There is nothing called a formal science like this, but a science that has been developed on inference. When a science like a feather and an iron ball dropped, both of them will hit on the ground in a vacuum, is same because it was ridiculed earlier, but when they tested recently in a vacuum chamber, it was right. In the space, when you drop a feather and an iron ball, they may drop at the same time, though the mass of both are different, but only in vacuum. This is the point which I want to tell you is, these proofs are emerging out very beautifully, very systematically, and more hospital records follow these proofs.